Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey, everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese. Ghostly Tales from Liao Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Ning. In traditional Chinese culture, it is believed that many small animals can transform into humans through cultivation. The most common of these are foxes. After transforming into humans, they often possess magical or illusionary abilities and retain memories of their time as animals. These supernatural beings, like humans, can be classified as good or evil. The good ones help kind-hearted humans and punish evildoers, while the evil ones may harm or even consume humans. Today, we will tell a story about a kind and lovely fox spirit. Once upon a time in the town of Luodian in Guizhou, there lived a young man named Wang Zifu. He was exceptionally bright, having become a scholar at the young age of 14, even though he had lost his father in his early years. Wang Zifu's mother was extremely fond of him and was especially concerned for his safety. She never allowed him to venture into the countryside for leisure. She had already arranged a marriage for him with a girl named Xiao, but tragically, the young lady passed away before the wedding, leaving Wang Zifu single. On the Lantern Festival day, his uncle's child Wu Sheng invited Wang Zifu to go sightseeing together. However, just as they left the village, one of his uncle's servants caught up with them and summoned Wu Sheng back. Wang Zifu had to continue his journey alone. As he strolled through the town and noticed that the streets were bustling with women who had come out to celebrate, he didn't feel lonely or bored anymore. Just then, a young woman with a little maidservant walked by Wang Zifu. She held a plum blossom branch in her hand, was incredibly beautiful and had a charming smile. Wang Zifu couldn't take his eyes off her, forgetting his status as a gentleman, which should have prevented him from staring so openly. The young woman continued a few steps, then turned to her servant and said, "Did you see that man? When he looked at me, his gaze was fixed, and he seemed disrespectful." She threw the plum blossom to the ground and walked away, laughing with her servant. Wang Zifu picked up the discarded plum blossom, feeling dejected and lost, as if he had lost his soul. He walked back home in a melancholic state. When he arrived, he hid the plum blossom under his pillow, lay down, and fell into a deep sleep. He refused to eat, drink, or speak. His mother, worried about his condition, called upon a Buddhist monk to set up an altar and perform an exorcism. However, Wang Zifu's condition didn't improve, in fact, it worsened over time. He became increasingly weak, his body wasting away, and he remained in a constant daze. Desperate, Wang Zifu's mother sought the help of a physician who examined him, prescribed medicines to dispel evil forces, but Wang Zifu continued to drift in and out of consciousness. Despite her gentle inquiries, he remained silent, unable or unwilling to explain what had happened. One day, Wu Sheng came to Wang Zifu's house. Wang Zifu's mother secretly instructed Wu Sheng to investigate the cause of Wang Zifu's illness without alerting him. When Wu Sheng approached the bed, he saw Wang Zifu burst into tears. Wu Sheng approached the bedside, comforted him, and gently inquired about why he had become like this. Wang Zifu then recounted the story of seeing the beautiful girl that day and pleaded for his help. Wu Sheng chuckled and said, "You are too infatuated. What's so difficult about this wish? I will find her for you." Since she was walking alone in the countryside, she is likely not from a wealthy family. If she hasn't been married off, it should be easier. If she is already betrothed to someone else, we'll spend some extra money, and I'm sure you can still achieve your goal. As long as you recover from your illness, leave this matter to me." Wang Zifu smiled at Wu Sheng's words. After leaving Wang Zifu's room, Wu Sheng told Wang's mother about the situation, and then he went around inquiring about the whereabouts of the girl. However, despite his efforts, he couldn't find any trace of her. Wang's mother was deeply worried, but there was nothing she could do. Since Wu Sheng's visit, Wang Zifu's mood improved, and he could eat a little. A few days later, Wu Sheng came again. Wang Zifu asked if he had found any information about the girl. Wu Sheng lied, saying, "I've found her. Guess who she is? It turns out she's my aunt's daughter, your cousin. She's not married yet and is eagerly looking for a husband. Although marrying close relatives is somewhat taboo, to be honest, there's no obstacle between you two." Hearing this, Wang Zifu was overjoyed. He asked Wu Sheng, "Where does she live?" Wu Sheng fabricated. "She lives in the southwestern mountains, about 30 miles from here." Wang Zifu repeatedly expressed his gratitude, and Wu Sheng volunteered to go and meet her. Then he left. From that day onwards, Wang Zifu's appetite gradually improved, and his health began to recover day by day. He examined the plum blossom hidden beneath the pillow, and although it had dried up, it had not yet withered away. He contemplated it and fiddled with the plum blossom, as if he had seen the girl again. Wang Zifu blamed Wu Sheng for not visiting him and wrote him a letter to come over. However, Wu Sheng made excuses and avoided meeting him, which made Wang Zifu both angry and resentful, causing him to become melancholic. Wang's mother, fearing his old illness would return, hurriedly arranged a marriage for him. But whenever she mentioned the idea of marriage, Wang Zifu shook his head and refused, with his heart set on waiting for Wu Sheng's arrival. Several more days passed, and Wu Sheng still hadn't shown up, which only fueled Wang Zifu's resentment. However, he thought to himself, why rely on others when the journey was only 30 miles away? So he placed the withered plum blossom in his sleeve, and, fueled by determination, he went alone, without anyone at home even knowing. Wang Zifu set off alone on the journey, with no one accompanying him. He didn't even encounter anyone to ask for directions. He had no choice but to continue walking towards the southern mountains. After walking for more than 30 miles, he saw lush green mountains with a serene and quiet valley below. There was no one around, and only a narrow winding path led down. He looked at the end of the valley and saw a small village hidden among the flowers and trees. He quickly descended the mountain and entered the village, observing that there were not many houses, mostly thatched cottages, which gave the whole village a more tranquil atmosphere. To the north, there was a house with willow trees in front of the door, while inside the courtyard, peach and apricot trees flourished, especially the peach trees, and there was a bamboo grove in the middle of the yard. Wild birds hid in the bamboo grove and chirped. Wang Zifu guessed this was probably the family's garden and didn't dare to enter. He turned to look at the house opposite. In front of the gate was a smooth large stone, and he decided to sit there and rest for a while. After a while, he heard a young lady inside the courtyard calling out a xiaorong, with a delicate and melodious voice. Just as he was intently listening, a young girl walked from east to west. She held an apricot blossom in her hand and was about to put it in her hair when she noticed Wang Zifu. She abandoned the idea of wearing the flower, smiled, and walked back into the house. Wang Zifu examined this young lady carefully and realized she was the little maidservant he had encountered during the Lantern Festival outing. He was overjoyed but realized he didn't have an excuse to get closer. He decided to first find his aunt. However, he had never interacted with his aunt before and was afraid of making a mistake. However, there was no one to ask inside the courtyard, and Wang Zifu stood there, neither sitting nor standing, pacing outside the gate with an unsettled mind. He waited from morning until sunset, hoping that someone would come out of the courtyard, and he even forgot about hunger and thirst. At that moment, the young girl peeked half of her face through the gate and looked at Wang Zifu with curiosity, wondering why he hadn't left yet. Suddenly, an elderly lady appeared, leaning on a cane, and she addressed Wang Zifu. "Young man, where do you come from? I heard you've been here since morning and are still here now. What are you planning to do? Are you hungry?" Wang Zifu hastily stood up and saluted the old lady. He replied, "I came to look for my relatives." The elderly lady, hard of hearing, didn't catch his words. Wang Zifu repeated himself loudly. Only then did the old lady ask, "What's your relative's surname?" Wang Zifu couldn't answer. The old lady chuckled and said, "How strange! You don't even know your relative's name. How can you visit them? You seem like a bookworm to me. Why don't you come inside, have some simple tea and food, and stay the night? Tomorrow, you can go back home, find out your relative's last name, and return for a proper visit." Wang Zifu was hungry and wanted food, plus this would bring him closer to the beautiful girl, so he gladly accepted the invitation. He followed the old lady into the courtyard, where white stones paved the path, and vibrant red flowers adorned both sides, with petals scattered on the steps. Along the stone path heading west, they passed through another small gate, revealing a courtyard filled with bean trellises and floral archways. The old lady ushered Wang Zifu into the living room, where the walls gleamed like mirrors, and outside the window, branches from the crabapple tree extended into the room. The bedding on the bed and the furniture were spotless. Wang Zifu had just sat down when someone peeked in through the window curiously. The old lady addressed the person outside, saying, "Xiaorong, hurry up and prepare some food." The person outside responded loudly. After a while, the old lady began to chat with Wang Zifu about their family backgrounds. The old lady asked, "Young man, is your mother's family name Wu?" Wang Zifu replied, "Yes." The old lady exclaimed, "You are my nephew. Your mother is my younger sister. Due to our family's poverty in recent years, we lost contact, and I didn't even know you had grown so much until now." Wang Zifu said. I came here for Auntie, and in my haste, I forgot your family name. The old lady said. My husband's family name is Qin, and we have no children of our own. We have a daughter here, born to a concubine. She's clever, but lacks education, always giggling without a care. In a while, I'll call her to meet you. Before long, the maidservant finished cooking, and a sumptuous meal was served, including a plump little chicken. The old lady continuously encouraged Wang Zifu to eat more. After the meal, the maidservant came in to clear the dishes. The old lady told the maidservant, "Call Ning." The maidservant acknowledged and left. After some time, Wang Zifu heard faint laughter from outside the door. The old lady called out again. Ning, your cousin from your aunt's side is here. The laughter continued. The servant pushed Ning into the room, but she was still laughing uncontrollably. The old lady gave her a stern look and said, "We have a guest, and you're still giggling like this. What's gotten into you?" The girl managed to stifle her laughter and stood to the side. Wang Zifu saw the girl and quickly walked over to greet her. The old lady introduced. "This is Wang, your aunt's son. We're family, yet this is the first time we've met." Wang Zifu asked the old lady. "How old is she?" The old lady didn't hear clearly, so Wang Zifu repeated the question. Hearing their conversation, the girl burst into laughter, her head tilted back. The old lady commented, "I told you she lacks education, and now you can see for yourself. She's already 16 years old but still acts like a silly child." Wang Zifu replied, "She's only a year younger than me." The old lady chuckled and said, "Our nephew is already 17, probably born in the year of the horse, right?" Wang Zifu nodded in agreement. The old lady then asked, "Who is the niece-in-law?" Wang Zifu answered, "I haven't married yet." The old lady remarked, "With the looks and talents of our nephew, why hasn't you married at 17? Ning also doesn't have a suitor. You two would make a great match, but it's a pity that cousin marriages aren't favored." Wang Zifu remained silent, his gaze locked on Ning, hardly blinking. The maidservant whispered to the girl, "Look at how he's staring, he hasn't changed a bit." The girl burst into laughter again. She said to the maidservant, "Let's go see if the peach blossoms in the garden are blooming." She suddenly stood up, covered her mouth with her sleeve, and walked out with small, delicate steps. Her laughter rang out again when she reached the door. The old lady also stood up and instructed the servant to prepare the bed for Wang Zifu. The old lady said to Wang Zifu, "It's not easy for our nephew to visit, so it would be best if you stayed here for 3 to 5 days, and then we can arrange for your return home. If you find the house stuffy, there's a small garden behind our house for leisure, and there are books available for reading as well." The next day, Wang Zifu went to the backyard to relax and indeed found a half-acre garden there. The yard was covered in fine, velvety grass like a green carpet, and there were little bits of poplar fluff drifting down. In the garden, there were 3 thatched cottages, surrounded by clusters of flowers and trees. He strolled through the garden, and he could hear a rustling sound from above. When he looked up, he saw Ning in a tree. She spotted Wang Zifu approaching and burst into laughter, nearly falling from the tree. Wang Zifu hurriedly shouted, "Stop laughing. Be careful not to fall." Ning slowly climbed down from the tree but still couldn't contain her laughter. As she neared the ground, she slipped and fell. Only then did her laughter finally subside. Wang Zifu helped her up and secretly pinched her wrist. Ning burst into laughter again, leaning against the tree and unable to move for a while. Wang Zifu waited for her to finish laughing before he took a plum blossom from his sleeve and showed it to her. Ning took the plum blossom and said to Wang Zifu, "This plum blossom has withered. Why do you keep it?" Wang Zifu replied, "It's from the Lantern Festival when we first met. I've kept it ever since." Ning asked, "What's the use of keeping it?" Wang Zifu said, "I keep it to express my love for you. Since the Lantern Festival, I've been lovesick. I thought I wouldn't survive, but I never expected to see your beauty again today. I hope you'll have mercy on me." Ning said, "That's nothing to worry about. We're close relatives, what's there to be reluctant about? When you leave, I'll have an old servant pick a big bunch of flowers from the garden for you to take back." Wang Zifu said eagerly, "Cousin, are you being naive?" Ning asked, "Why do you say I'm naive?" Wang Zifu replied, "I love not the flowers, but the person who picks them." Ning said, "We are relatives, and isn't it natural for relatives to love and care for each other?" Wang Zifu, feeling a bit awkward, replied, "The love I mentioned is not the love between relatives, but the love between husband and wife." Ning asked in confusion, "What's the difference?" Wang Zifu said, "At night, we'd share the same bed." Ning lowered her head and thought for a long time before saying, "I'm not used to sleeping with strangers." As she spoke, her maid approached silently. Wang Zifu noticed the maid and became anxious, moving away. After a while, Wang Zifu and Ning met again in the old lady's room. The old lady asked Ning, "Where did you two go?" Ning replied that she was chatting with her cousin in the garden. The old lady asked again, "The food has been ready for a while. What could you possibly talk about for so long?" Ning answered, "My cousin said he wanted to sleep with me." Before she could finish, Wang Zifu was extremely embarrassed. He urgently used his eyes to signal her to stop talking, and Ning finally smiled faintly, saying no more. Fortunately, the old lady's hearing was poor, and she continued to chatter on without hearing clearly. Wang Zifu quickly changed the topic with other words. Because of this incident, Wang Zifu quietly scolded Ning. Ning said, "Shouldn't I have said that just now?" Wang Zifu said, "Those were meant for our private conversation." Ning said, "It's okay to say it behind others' backs. Why hide it from mother? Besides, sleeping together is a normal thing. What's there to be ashamed of?" Wang Zifu was frustrated by her naivety and had no way to make her understand. Right after they finished their meal, someone from Wang Zifu's family came with 2 donkeys. Wang Zifu's mother, worried because Wang Zifu hadn't returned for a long time, had been searching the village for him but found no trace of him. She had also sent someone to inquire about Wang Zifu's whereabouts from Wu Shang, who remembered his earlier words and directed them to this southwestern mountain village. After searching through several villages, they finally arrived here. Wang Zifu happened to be going out for a walk and met the people looking for him. He went to inform the old lady and asked if he could take Ning back with him. The old lady happily agreed, saying, "I've been thinking about this for a while, not just today. It's just that I'm old and frail and can't travel long distances. It's great that my nephew can take his cousin back home and introduce her to her aunt." "That's wonderful." She then called for Ning, who came in with a smile. The old lady said to her, "Why are you so happy? If you could just get rid of this laughing habit, you'd be a perfect person." The old lady glared at her angrily and then continued, "Your cousin intends to take you back with him. Hurry back to your room and pack up." The old lady treated the servants of the Wang family to a meal, and then they all left. The old lady instructed Ning, "Your aunt's family is prosperous, and they can afford to keep a couple of idlers. When you get there, don't rush back. Learn some poetry, etiquette, and manners. It will be useful when you serve your in-laws. And, by the way, ask your aunt to find you a good husband." Wang Zifu and Ning listened to the old lady's advice, bid her farewell, and set off on their journey. As they walked into the mountain pass, they looked back and could faintly see the old lady still leaning against the door, gazing towards the north. Back at home, Wang Zifu's mother was surprised to see a very beautiful girl and asked who she was. Wang Zifu explained that she was his aunt's daughter. His mother said, "Your words remind me of what Wu Sheng told you before. He was just deceiving you. I don't have a sister, so where did this niece come from?" She then questioned Ning, who replied, "I am not her biological daughter. My father's surname is Qin, and he died when I was still in swaddling clothes, so I have no memory of him." Wang Zifu's mother said, "I did have a sister who married into the Qin family, that part is true. However, she passed away many years ago. How could she still be alive?" She became even more suspicious and asked Ning detailed questions about her mother's appearance and any moles or marks on her skin. To her amazement, everything Ning described matched her sister's characteristics. Wang Zifu's mother remained puzzled and said, "What you're saying is all true. However, my sister has been dead for many years. How can she still be alive?" While she was deep in thought and suspicion, Wu Sheng arrived, causing Ning to hide in the inner room. After inquiring about the situation, Wu Sheng was perplexed for a long time. Suddenly, he asked Wang Zifu, "Is this girl named Ning?" Wang Zifu confirmed it, and Wu Sheng expressed his astonishment. Wang Zifu then asked Wu Sheng what he knew. Wu Sheng replied, "After my aunt from the Qin family passed away, my uncle lived alone. I heard he became infatuated with a fox spirit, and he later died of illness. The fox spirit gave birth to a daughter, and they named her Ning. They even wrapped the child in a mat and placed her on the bed for everyone to see. After my uncle's death, the fox spirit would still come back from time to time. It was only when we invited Master Zhang, who used talisman papers to stick on the walls, that the fox spirit finally left with Ning. Could the girl you see now be that same Ning? Everyone discussed this matter with uncertainty. Laughter was heard from the inner room, where Ning was chirping and laughing non-stop. Wang Zifu's mother commented, "This girl is really simple-minded." Wu Sheng wished to meet Ning, so Wang Zifu's mother led him into the inner room. However, Ning, upon seeing him, immediately bowed and then hurriedly ran back inside, bursting into loud laughter. When she finally came back out, she had to turn her body to face the wall and compose herself for quite some time before greeting the guests. After appearing, she greeted Wu Sheng, and then, as soon as she turned around, she dashed back inside the room and burst into laughter again. Her behavior was so amusing that the women in the room couldn't help but laugh as well. Wu Sheng proposed to go to Ning's home himself to find out the truth and, at the same time, act as a matchmaker for Wang Zifu. When he arrived at that mountain village, he found that there was not a single house there, only withered fallen petals scattered on the ground. Wu Sheng recalled that the place where his aunt was buried seemed to be nearby, but the grave had long been neglected and was unrecognizable. With astonishment and amazement, he returned home. After hearing Wu Sheng's account of his encounter, Wang Zifu's mother suspected they had encountered a ghost. She told Ning about this, but surprisingly, Ning was not afraid at all. Wang Zifu's mother pitied her for being homeless, yet Ning showed no signs of sorrow. She continued to laugh incessantly, leaving everyone perplexed. Wang Zifu's mother allowed Ning to live with her own daughter, and Ning came to pay her respects every morning. Her needlework was exceptionally exquisite. She loved to laugh, and no one could stop her, but her laughter did not diminish her charm. Everyone loved her, and women and girls from the neighborhood were eager to befriend her. Wang Zifu's mother selected an auspicious day for their wedding, but she still feared that Ning might be a supernatural being. To reassure herself, she secretly observed Ning's behavior in the sunlight and found no abnormalities. On the auspicious day, Wang's family dressed Ning in bridal attire, but her laughter was so uncontrollable that she couldn't perform the traditional rituals, so they had to give up. Due to Ning's silliness and fear that she might inadvertently reveal intimate matters to outsiders, Wang Zifu cautioned her to keep their private life secret. Whenever Wang's mother was upset or angry, Ning's presence alone, along with her laughter, could dispel those negative emotions. Servant girls who made minor mistakes, fearing punishment from their mistress, would plead with Ning to speak on their behalf first before they went to Wang's mother. This way, they could avoid reprimand. Ning had a passion for flowers and would collect them from the homes of relatives and friends if they had attractive ones. Sometimes, she would even secretly pawn her own gold hairpins and jewelry to buy rare flower seeds. Several months later, every corner of the courtyard, including both sides of the steps and even around the outhouse, was filled with flowers. In the backyard, there was an arbor near the western neighbor's courtyard wall. Ning would often climb onto the arbor to pick flowers, which she'd either place in her hair or bring inside to admire. When Wang's mother saw this, she would scold her, but Ning never changed her ways. One day, the son of the neighbor to the west spotted Ning picking flowers on the arbor. He was captivated by her beauty and couldn't take his eyes off her. Yet, Ning didn't avoid his gaze, she continued to smile. The young man thought that Ning was showing interest in him, making his heart race even more. Ning pointed toward the base of the wall with her finger and then descended, still wearing her smile. The young man thought she was indicating a dating place and was elated. At dusk, the young man went to the designated spot and found Ning waiting there, just as she had implied. He tried to take advantage of her, but suddenly felt as if he had been stabbed with a sharp object below his waist, causing excruciating pain. He couldn't help but scream and collapsed to the ground. When he took a closer look, he realized that the figure before him wasn't Ning at all, it was a piece of deadwood lying against the wall. The source of his pain was a hole in the wood, which had become soaked by rain. The young man's father rushed over upon hearing his son's screams, but the young man could only moan in pain. His wife also arrived, and he explained what had happened. They lit a fire to see better and discovered a large scorpion in the hole, resembling a small crab. The elderly neighbor, infuriated, split the wood and killed the scorpion. Then they carried their son back home, but in the middle of the night, he still passed away. The neighbor's family was furious, filed a lawsuit against Wang Zifu, claiming that Ning was a demon and she must have been behind it all. The county magistrate, who usually admired Wang Zifu's intelligence and knew him to be an upright scholar, determined that the neighbor was making false accusations. He intended to punish the neighbor with a flogging. Wang Zifu pleaded with the magistrate to spare the neighbor, and the magistrate reluctantly released him and sent him away. After the incident, Wang's mother cautioned Ning, saying, "Your excessive cheerfulness can hide lurking dangers, and I've known that from the beginning." Fortunately, the county magistrate was perceptive and didn't let this trouble us. If we had encountered an obtuse official, you would have been dragged to court, and what face would our family have had then? Ning, with a solemn expression, swore that she would never smile again. However, Wang's mother reminded her, "People can't go without smiling. It's all about appropriateness." From then on, Ning truly stopped smiling. Even when people tried to amuse her, she remained expressionless, neither smiling nor showing sorrow. One night, much to Wang Zifu's surprise, Ning suddenly burst into tears in front of him. Sniffling, she said, "In the past, we hadn't spent much time together, and I was afraid the truth would frighten you. But now, with your mother and you showing me such love, I believe I can be honest. Perhaps it won't be so bad. I was born of a fox. When my mother left, she entrusted me to my spirit mother, and we lived together for over a decade. With no siblings and only you to rely on, I've come to you. My spirit mother remains lonely and suffering in the mountains. No one has shown her compassion or helped her find a proper burial, and she carries deep resentment in the afterlife. If you're willing to spend the effort and money to relieve her sorrow, it might stop people from abandoning their daughters or sons." Wang Zifu agreed to Ning's request, but expressed concern about finding her foster mother's burial place amidst the overgrown grass. Ning assured him not to worry. They chose a day and set out with a cart carrying the coffin. In the midst of the vast wilderness of tall grass, Ning pointed the way to her foster mother's grave. Remarkably, they found the old woman's body, still well preserved. Ning gently touched the corpse and began to sob. Later, they carried the old woman's body back and found the Qin family burial plot to lay her to rest alongside her husband. That night, Wang Zifu dreamt of the old woman, who came to express her gratitude. Upon waking, he shared the dream with Ning, and she told him, "I saw her too last night, and I told her not to startle you." Wang Zifu regretted not inviting her to stay, but Ning explained, "She's a spirit. With so many living people here and strong yang energy, it wouldn't benefit her to stay for long." Wang Zifu inquired about their maidservant, Xirong, and Ning replied, "She's also a fox, quite clever. My birth mother left her to look after me. She often brought me food, and I'll always cherish her friendship. I asked my spirit mother yesterday, and she said Xirong is already married." From that day forward, every year on Qingming Festival, Wang Zifu would take his wife to the Qin family's burial grounds to offer sacrifices and clean the area without fail. Another year passed, and Ning gave birth to a son. The child, cradled in his mother's arms, was unafraid of strangers, always smiling, and possessed his mother's grace and temperament. The author had a deep affection for Ning, and at the end of the story, he wrote a commentary about her character. He said, "Looking at Ning's innocent laughter, she appears to be carefree. However, observing her clever and mischievous pranks beneath the wall, one can see her cunning wit. As for her poignant longing for her spirit mother, transforming laughter into tears, my Ning probably sought to conceal herself with smiles. I've heard of a type of grass in the mountains called laughing grass. When people smell it, they can't stop laughing. If you were to plant such grass in a room, compared to other flowers like mimosa and forget-me-nots, they would lose their charm. As for explanatory flowers, their affected behavior is truly annoying." Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tale. Ning. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.